Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call the October 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Board of Commissioners to order. And before we get started, Mayor Gorham, I saw him earlier. There he is. Okay. Well, now, turn it over to Mayor Gorham.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
On behalf of the Regional City Council and our illustrious city manager, Summer Woodard, Chairman Berger, we'd like to welcome you to our facility. Our home is your home.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. We will start tonight with the invocation being delivered by Pastor Steve Latimer of Sandy Cross Wesleyan Church. That'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. That'll be led by Lena Wilder. Lena is one that's been very active in our youth council earlier in her life, so I want to thank her for showing back up tonight. If everyone would please rise and remove the caps.
Let's bow our heads. Father, in the name of Jesus, we come before you and bow, acknowledging that who you are, Lord, and who we are. And Father, so tonight as we go into this meeting, I trust and pray that all those that have a part here understand that, God, you are in charge here. I don't know what the issues are, Lord, but you do. So, Father, we're going to trust you. We're going to leave these things in your hands. Lord, as these capable men and women move forward with all these issues, Lord, we want to thank you for just the grace that you provided us for this meeting tonight. Now, Lord God, may Jesus be glorified in everything that takes place here. I pray this in Jesus' name, and everybody said,
Amen.
Everyone please face the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you to both of you for helping us with those items tonight. Next, gentlemen, have the approval of tonight's agenda. You've received a copy of this agenda within the past week. Do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Make a motion.
Motion by Commissioner Powell. Second by Commissioner Richardson. All in favor, let it be known by the sound of aye.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, items on the consent agenda are non-controversial in nature. If you have any questions about matters under the consent agenda, please reach out to the county manager or his staff. They'll be glad to answer any questions or provide any additional information about items on the consent agenda. With that said, we have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Hall.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Travis. All in favor, let it be known by the sound of aye.
Aye.
Then we come to the public comment portion of tonight's meeting. We do have people that have signed up for public comment. Mr. Metzler, would you please read the rules regarding public comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing members of the public to present any matters pertaining to county business or items on the Board of Commissioners agenda. Remarks shall be addressed directly to the Board of Commissioners and not to staff, the audience, or media. The chairperson shall open the public comment period. Any person who wishes to speak shall approach the podium and not speak from his or her seat. Each speaker should clearly state his or her name and physical address when he or she approaches the podium. Each person shall be allotted 3 minutes. Citizens will be allowed to yield their time on a specific topic by utilizing one more attendee's time. This will allow no more than 6 minutes. Your time will be displayed on the little monitor over here. The clock will start with 3 minutes unless yielded time to 6 minutes. You will hear a beep at 1 minute to alert you to wrap up your comments. If you already yielded your time or time is yielded to you, then please let the chairman know in advance. Speakers will not be allowed to campaign for public office, promote private business ventures, or use language of a personal nature which insults or demeans any person, or which, when directed at a public official, is not related to his or her official duties. The Board of Commissioners may accept written comments in lieu of oral statements. Written statements can be delivered to the County Manager's Office. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. First is Admiral Bullins.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you giving me the time to speak. I'm Admiral Bullins. I live at 338 Orange Road in Eden. I am a retiree from the Rockingham County Sheriff's Office with 30 years of service. And my reason for being here today was just to commend you guys on doing this proclamation for law enforcement. Law enforcement has a tough job. I've been in law enforcement a long time. I've done a lot of jobs in law enforcement. And I've been assaulted a lot. I've been shot at. I've been spit on, kicked, slapped, you name it. And people like yourselves that's willing to stand up and say, Rockingham County is not going to put up with people attacking our law enforcement officials. And we are on law enforcement team means a lot. And I think it's going to mean a lot to the public, the things that you're doing here tonight. I appreciate your time. I just wanted to commend you on that. Sometimes commissioners get more negative comments than they do positive, and I wanted to make sure you knew we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Christian Castelli.
Race.
Christian Castelli.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christian Castelli. I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel, Green Beret. I'm also your Republican nominee for Congress here in District 6. My father was a police officer for 23 years. My grandfather was a police officer. I take violence toward police officers very seriously. Something I'd like to read for public comment here. The Democrat who currently holds the seat.
Now, Mr. Castelli, we just got to make sure we're not campaigning for public office and just speak the things that we're dealing with as far as county business. If you want to address that, that's fine.
Okay. I was told that I'd be able to speak out against violence against police officers.
You can.
You can.
Please proceed.
As it relates to Congress and actions in Congress, if I might. Last year, the House of Representatives voted for the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Essentially, it would ban chokeholds, no-knock warrants, create a national police database, national standards for policing. It would reevaluate the process police officers use to perform vehicle stops for minor infractions. And at face value, this may seem helpful for law enforcement officers. It also supports increased mental health care for the stress of the daily job. In actuality, it limits law enforcement in their ability to do their job. It also lowers the criminal intent standard from willful to knowingly or reckless. It creates a process to convict law enforcement officers and limits qualified immunity, one of the most valuable tools our police officers have in doing their job. It also creates a national registry where you would thereby be able to track police officers with infractions. As a son of a retired law enforcement officer, I've had these discussions around my kitchen table often. And as potentially your future representative, I pledge my unwavering commitment to support federal, state, and local law enforcement officers. This concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Turner.
Hello, my name is Jessica Turner. I am a wife and a mother of 4, and I homeschool my children. I am not going to be able to be at the city council meeting next Tuesday, and I just have a question that I wanted to ask about and see if someone could give me some guidance. We do live on South Park Drive, and recently a bike lane was put in, and last week, one morning, my husband was parked on the street. When we got home, there were no parking signs, and we only have a 1-car parking space, and we do not have the ability or the room to extend it. So I called Sergeant Joyce, I believe was who I was put in touch with. He has not responded back. And so I'm wondering what is that we can do. I know there are a lot of people on our street who need that street for parking, or if we have company coming over. There was no public comment that I knew of. I didn't hear of a time when we could come and bring that to you and see the number of cyclists. We've lived there for almost 6 years, and I can probably count on one hand the number of cyclists that I've seen. And so I'm just wondering, going forward, what is it that we are supposed to do? If you're able to answer that or put me in mind of who I can comment to.
You're in luck tonight. There's a couple of folks with the city of Reidsville here. I believe right here in the front row, Summer will be glad to speak with you.
Okay,
and
sure.
get your name and number.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes the people that have signed up for public comment.
Thank you. Go on her.
Carry on.
So next we do come to the proclamation to support all law enforcement. And we do have a couple of people here that are going to speak about the proclamation, and we will start with Jason Raymond.
Good evening, Commissioners. I want to start off by thanking you for bringing awareness to such an important issue and for showing concern. Over the last several years, there's been a dramatic increase in the disrespect that's shown towards law enforcement and the violence against them. I've been the District Attorney for Rockingham and Caswell County for 4 years now. And since I've been the DA, I've had at least 4 incidences during that time period where officers were fired upon. And just in Caswell County a few weeks ago, officer was shot 3 times. And by God's grace, he survived. But I think it's important for purposes of deterrence and incapacitation that we let criminals know that we're not going to tolerate it. And certainly my office is not going to tolerate it. But the way that structured sentencing is laid out, and structured sentencing is just what the North Carolina legislature has put into place, and they categorize certain crimes by letter. Either Class A, meaning the highest level, death or life without parole, all the way down to Class I felonies. Assault with a deadly weapon, or actually assault with a firearm on law enforcement, is a Class D felony. And that's equivalent to armed robbery, first-degree burglary, and other things. And it comes with some serious consequences. But in my opinion, and I think that at most, it's not enough. When you attempt to murder a police officer, the highest felony we can charge you with would be a B2, because it's just attempted first-degree murder. There's no special categorizations for law enforcement. But if the legislature would elevate that Class D felony to, let's say, a B1, could get substantially more time. And we wouldn't even have to prove intent. Attempted first-degree murder means that you attempted to kill someone unlawfully with malice, including premeditation and deliberation. But when you're shooting at police officers, like we had a few weeks ago when the Eaton Police Department was chasing someone, or when officer just comes to the door to serve a civil paper and he gets shot 3 times. I'm limited by what their record level is, meaning there's 6 categories based off of how many points that you get based off your prior criminal history, and what category it's in the same way for the judges. In North Carolina, if you assault a police officer and you don't inflict injury, it's a misdemeanor. It's a Class A1 misdemeanor. And that's the most serious version of a misdemeanor you can get, but it's still a misdemeanor. Assaulting police officers have to go day in and day out and do such a dangerous job. Sounds to me that we don't communicate to society and to the criminals that it's a serious enough offense if it's just a misdemeanor. So I'm so thankful that this board right here is seeing the trends in society, seeing the proliferation of violence against police officers, and trying to do something about it. I'm willing to take any questions.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Raymond, let me ask you something. A Class A felony is punishable by life in prison or the death sentence. Is that correct? Typically,
Correct.
that's reserved for murder. And there's no distinction right now in our crimes, in those crimes, between a private citizen and a police officer. Not that any death is very important. I'm just saying there's not a distinction. Is that correct?
Correct.
So
First degree murder is first degree murder.
and so in the case of a police officer, you'd still have to prove premeditation and or the commission of felony, the felony murder rule, so to speak. Is that correct?
You're right, Commissioner Powell, but even under the felony murder rule, they have to be engaged in inherently dangerous felony, such as robbery. But if someone, if the police officer tried to pull someone over for a traffic ticket and the person just shoots them, that the felony murder rule wouldn't apply. It would have to be premeditation and deliberation.
So it would be possible under our system now, if we wanted to increase that penalty, it would be possible for the legislature, if they could and would, pass a provision under the Class A sentencing guidelines that says, basically, if you're a police officer and you're murdered in the line of duty or because of your duty, then premeditation will be taken out in the felony murder rule. In other words, it would be just enough for the fact that a police officer was killed in the performance of their duty to put them in line for a death penalty or life in prison. Is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner Powell, that is correct. The death penalty is authorized under the North Carolina Constitution, but it's given to the state legislature to decide whether it applies to Class A felonies, only being murder, or, well, actually, that's all it is first degree murder, not anything else. It's just a creation of the state legislature. I will say this, I don't want to go off too far, but the death penalty is basically done in North Carolina, and it's a shame. The last time they executed someone was in 2006. In 2006, I was still a sophomore in college, and I'm not far away from having a son that's in college now. They basically have a moratorium on it, and even though to get rid of the death penalty, they need to put a vote to the citizens to amend the Constitution. I worked with a ADA in Stanley County that was fantastic. She prosecuted a guy named Henry Louis Wallace, who in 1993 strangled, sexually assaulted, and murdered 9 African American females. And he was given 9 death sentences, and he's still breathing. And there's nothing, but I guess that's an issue for another time. Maybe the county could take up on a resolution. But the death penalty in North Carolina, for all intents and purposes, is not carried out. However, that's not because it's the will of the people or that they've made that known. And federally, I believe they still execute people or at least they did, and under the last administration, for murdering police officers and things like that. And,
Thank you.
but at the end of the day, the idea of shooting at a police officer at all, and in some instances, let's say you're a record level 1 and you're class D felony, under structured sentencing, you have minimum sentences and maximum sentences. And in North Carolina, you have to serve every day of your minimum sentence, thankfully. There's that old rule back when you were a deputy, you know, they get 40 years and serve 10. That's not how it works anymore. They have to serve the minimum sentences. But under structured sentencing, you could shoot a police officer, be charged with assault with a deadly weapon on, or with a firearm on law enforcement, and get 38 months minimum. And I want to thank the state legislature, because a couple of years ago they increased it to a D. Before that it was a class F felony, where you could have got 10 months and probation. But as I said before, this is an important issue. It is happening more and more. As I said, I'm the DA of 2 rural counties, and I've only been the DA for 4 years, and we've had 4 of these instances where shots were fired at them. I've had other instances where guns were pointed at law enforcement, which is an assault. The shots weren't fired, and I'm just thankful that our law enforcement officers are still willing to come to work every day for the kind of pay that they get, what they encounter all the time, but I do think it means a lot to them that their county commissioners support them, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our Sheriff, Sam Page.
Commissioners, I have a prepared speech, but I want to make sure I don't leave out anything, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. And again, I appreciate what you're doing here today on this particular topic about our law enforcement officers and violence being used against them. To our commissioners, my fellow law enforcement officers, elected officials, law enforcement supporters here tonight, and supporters across Rockingham County. As your sheriff, I'm very honored to stand here tonight and show my support with you all, whom I consider local heroes that wear the badge and serve with integrity every day, representing law enforcement agencies from several of our jurisdictions across the county. In America, there are 800,000 law enforcement officers that serve local, state, and federal levels. In the United States, over the past few years, we've observed an increased level of violence directed toward our law enforcement officers, probation officers, and correctional officers. In 2022, there were 181 officers have been killed in the line of duty. 2022, 181. There have been 16 officers shot in North Carolina in the line of duty in 2022, and there have been 6 officers killed in North Carolina in 2022. As recent as 2 weeks ago, one of our local agencies encountered a suspect during a pursuit and traffic stop, and the suspect discharged his weapon at the officers. Ladies and gentlemen, that happened in Rockingham County, and that's not the first time that this has happened to one of our officers here. When a suspect will attack, assault, or try to kill an officer, that's an attack on the officer, a public servant, our law-abiding society, and a protector of your family and our communities. That's lawlessness at its worst. This violence directed toward our officers must stop. We must send a clear message from our Commissioner Board to the state of North Carolina and to the would-be offenders that violence used against any law enforcement officer will not be tolerated and will be prosecuted to the highest level. And I appreciate the comments of our district attorney. Great guy. And a lot of information that a lot of people are not aware of. To our commissioners, I commend you on drafting and adopting your resolution that you'll be presenting tonight to show your continued support for each law enforcement officer in Rockingham County. Every law enforcement officer in Rockingham County, as you know, has taken a solemn oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution, to enforce the laws of the state of North Carolina equally and fairly for all. Each and every one of our law enforcement officers, like you, goes to work, they do their jobs to the best of their ability, and at the end of the workday, they expect to come home and be there with their family and friends. With your continued support and the support of all communities that we serve, we in law enforcement will strive to provide the best level of law enforcement service and live up to the public expectations of our profession while protecting and serving all of our citizens living in our local communities. Thank you. And I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you so much.
We do have a member of the state legislature here, Representative Reese Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. I stand before you tonight grateful as a law enforcement officer. I was a law enforcement officer back in 1990, and I retired 4 years ago, but I'm still in good standing with the state of North Carolina and still hold my certification today. I understand what these gentlemen out in the hall and ladies out in the hall do every day. I've been there, made the arrest, I've taken the weapon off someone tonight. I've been involved in where I was assaulted, or members of my team were assaulted. So I'm grateful for the leadership here in Rockingham County taking the lead to ensure that that law enforcement is looked after. I stand before you as a police chief angry that we even having to have this conversation. My biggest fear when I was a leader of an agency was that one of my people was going to get hurt. I met by somebody who was out on bond or out of prison or doing something they weren't supposed to. And I was going to have to send to get their spouse and bring them to the hospital. Had to do that. And it makes me angry to see, back at the end of July and the 1st of August, 7 officers shot and 2 killed in a 3-week period. One of the things that I've done since when I was a police chief was I'd send all the new officers to a funeral somewhere in the state or somewhere in our adjoining states so that they could see that uniform and that vest and protect them. They weren't Superman, they were humans. I stand before you tonight saddened as a member of the community that we've had to have this conversation, that our moral compasses went this direction, that we as a society don't hold law enforcement officers in the same esteem as we did many years ago. But I stand before you also motivated as a member of the House. The second week of August, I made that telephone call to leadership in both chambers, to caucus members, and to the Conference of District Attorneys, pledging my support for exactly what you're talking about doing tonight, raising the penalty for those that assault a law enforcement officer with a firearm. That is an assault on our community. That is assault on more than just that officer. That's assault on the people of this state and this community. So I thank you for what you're doing, and I look forward to being the carrier to this document tonight down the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson.
Thank you for allowing me to come here to speak this evening. The issue here for me is real simple. It is time for us to return law and order to our communities. You turn on the television set and what do you see? You see people being murdered. You see people being assaulted. You see people being raped. You see stores being looted, and no one's doing anything about it. And everybody's clamoring, saying, what do we do? What do we do? How did we get here? We all know how we got here. There's no mystery as to how we got here. The moment we start to degenerate law enforcement, deride law enforcement, tell untruths about law enforcement, we start to force good men and women out of the departments. We start handcuffing these guys behind their backs, and we don't show them the proper respect. The criminals are watching. They're watching all this, and they're taking full advantage of it. Now, everybody thinks that law enforcement and stopping all this crime and putting it into it, we all think it starts out there on the streets. I can tell you, it does not. It starts right here in this room, and in rooms like this all across this nation. The people who employ these officers, hire these officers, need to be the ones who stand up for these officers. They are depending on you to have as much backbone in carrying out your duty to protect them as they do in carrying out their duty to protect their cities and their counties. Without it, they are less than, and they don't have it now. We definitely need increased penalties for people who assault police officers, because it is time in this nation to bring law and order back. The people are demanding it, our police officers need it, and without it, we're going to continue to see chaos reign in our cities. We cannot have that. I implore you, pass this resolution. Let's do the right thing. Let's set a standard in this area. and make it go across the state, because it's time, folks. It's time for us to get back to law and order. Thank you.
Thank you. And we've heard some discussion about this resolution. Lance, would you please read the resolution?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, whereas the Rockingham County Board of Commissioners strongly support all law enforcement officers within the county and throughout the nation to dedicate their careers and place themselves in harm's way to protect citizens and our communities. Whereas law enforcement officers throughout Rockingham County work tirelessly to protect and serve citizens across the county, enforce our laws, and keep our neighborhoods, schools, and families safe. And whereas these brave and courageous men and women ensure the safety of our children, elderly, families, and guests by willingly confronting on a daily basis dangerous circumstances and potential threats of personal harm, serious bodily injury, or even death. Whereas we have unfortunately witnessed on a nation and state level deliberate targeted attacks on law enforcement officers who dedicate their lives to safeguarding our communities and helping others. Whereas these deliberate targeted attacks on law enforcement officers who have committed their life to public service are the most deplorable and heinous acts of violence and must not be tolerated. Whereas the Rockingham County Board of Commissioners supports the increase of the lawful maximum civil and/or criminal penalties imposed on those individuals that attack and/or harm our law enforcement officers. Now, therefore, we, the Rockingham County Board of Commissioners, convey sincere appreciation and gratitude to all local law enforcement officers and their families who selflessly and professionally serve and protect our communities, and we adamantly denounce and reject any acts and violence on our law enforcement officers throughout Rockingham County, our state, and our nation. And that the Rockingham County Board of Commissioners hereby supports the increase of the lawful maximum civil and/or criminal penalties that shall be imposed on those individuals who attack and/or cause harm to our law enforcement officers, adopted this 3rd day of October 2022. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Gentlemen, do we have any comments anyone wants to share with us? Yes.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you to all of our speakers for coming out tonight, for the Lieutenant Governor for showing up here. This is a subject that we all care about, and I work with a whole lot of these guys here. And back in the day when Chief Festerman was the chief of the Regional Police Department, things were a little better back then. We didn't hear about this quite as much as we do now. So to the Lieutenant Governor's credit, things have deteriorated, but we can change it. And it's time that Rockingham County goes on record as saying we're not going to tolerate that with our law enforcement officers anymore. And I think we've done that tonight. So I appreciate your patience and coming out and supporting this. And we certainly will be honored to allow Reese to carry this with him back to the legislature to let them know we support increasing the mandatory minimums for people who harm our police officers.
No question that when ladies and gentlemen leave their home to protect us, their families expect them to return and pray that they do. And we certainly have to do everything within our power to deter anyone from keeping that from happening each time they leave the house. So, gentlemen, with that, if we don't have any other comments, do we have a motion to approve the proclamation?
Make a motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Powell, second by Commissioner Richardson. All in favor, let it be known by the sound of aye.
Aye.
And if we could, where's Rebecca? Where is she? There she is. If we could get all of our former law enforcement that are here to come down. We've got Rebecca. I don't know if she can squeeze y'all into a photograph. We may need to stay back here in order for that to happen. If y'all could come forward. Chief Festerman, Representative Hurdle.
Same page.
Yeah, the ones that are here.
So you want to,
Reese.
but you want to get the active officers too.
Yeah, active and
Yeah.
former, yes, I'm sorry.
If you're a police officer or a former police, come on up.
Maybe the sheriff, same.
Actually, Reese, Sheriff, get a picture of delivering that to Representative Pearl.
Do you want to get that?
Come on, get it.
Well, that's in the background. They the ones doing all the heavy lifting now. Appreciate it. They doing all the heavy lifting. It's hot like it.
Take a step up here.
Jason, come on.
If we can make probably 3 rows.
We're gonna put you in the back.
Now they see y'all.
People in front. That's why.
Go in the back up.
Commissioner Powell, can you put 2 steps out? Perfect. And then Commissioner Travis, can you step 1 step that way?
I'll give us a countdown.
Okay, 3, 3, 2. Okay, took several.
Congratulations to you. Hadn't seen you since all that happened. Working at Second Door. A little bit of both. You're gonna be fine.
I'll get you one, yeah.
I want to thank every one of them for being here and taking time to be here tonight. Before we get any further, I do want to hand the floor to former Chief Festerman, City Council member here.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. I've had the opportunity to be in this building on many, many occasions over the past 50 years. And tonight is one of the more delightful nights for me. If I get choked up, please excuse me, because this is very dear to my heart. I appreciate the action you gentlemen take tonight, and I hope it sends a message across our great state of North Carolina. And it was particularly great to have our Lieutenant Governor join us tonight, too. So that tells you where he's coming from and what we'd all do if we work together. So it's been a great evening. I applaud you for your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll take my water with me. And one other thing, one other thing before I go. If you noticed, I didn't get in front of Sheriff Page when they had the camera, because I know that's the most dangerous place to be in North Carolina.
As you can see, Chief Festerman is a very wise man. Next is Trey Wright.
Good evening, Commissioners. How's everyone doing tonight? I am here to present to you all these findings from our opioid study, or opioid project. You should have the presentation in your pamphlet, so I will go over the notes of it and then our recommendations. Just historical fact, I call it the Master Settlement Agreement. I go back to when the tobacco. There was a lawsuit in North Carolina for the 4 big drug rep companies. So with that, Rockingham County is a part of that and will receive funding for about 18 years. That's a little over $8.7 million. But with that, you had to look at different options to decide on how to spend that money. There's some stipulations with it. There must be budget resolutions, etc. But with that, we wanted to make sure we best use those funds. So our staff went and conducted focus groups throughout the county as well as surveys. And with that, you can see in your packet that they did recommend option A, but of the 12 strategies that were in the master settlement agreement, the ones that we will look at here, I'm used to having my clicker, so it takes me a minute. So with that, with our focus groups, our community surveys, that they did request option A, and with that was to invest in early intervention programs. Examples are prevention, education, and treatment of anxiety, depression, and trauma in all age groups. Behavioral health awareness in all workplaces, and address social determinants of health, for example, healthcare, housing, etc. Invest in recovery support services. Examples of that are recovery and harm reduction support programs, recovery court and diversion programs. Invest in evidence-based addiction treatment. Examples are increase or expand telehealth services for needed substance abuse treatment services, behavioral therapies and pharmacotherapies, and work with our LME, MCO, and partners to establish an in-county treatment facility. I would also like to say that I know counties around us are looking at that, and this is a great opportunity with some of these recommendations to look at partnering for such a treatment facility. And also expand our existing post-overdose response team, also known as PORT, and expand peer support and community paramedic services across the entire county, and also assist individuals with accessing MAT, so that's medication-assisted treatment, detox, and other evidence-based treatments. One other thing to handle all this and manage that is to hire a full-time person, a human service plan evaluator, to take charge of this. There are certain things that we have to do yearly, increase outreach, education, and bring more community partners to the table.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Hopkins.
He brought up treatment facility, and one thing I'd like to be sure we're doing, and maybe I'd ask our county manager if he would look into what Surrey County, Stokes County, see if we could collaborate with other neighboring counties to do this. I just think it's very important that we find something for that, so I think that's an important piece of this puzzle. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And tonight, we're not looking to take any action.
Well, the action is they're seeking
Approve
is.
option A. So
Yes.
I know he's got to bring back the budget amendment and,
Yes.
and that sort of thing, so, okay.
Approve the recommendation of hiring a staff person on option A.
Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Travis. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Hall. All in favor, let it be known by the sound of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, and you've got the next item as well.
All right, thank you. I will briefly go over this. You should have in the package our presentation from our Human Services Board meeting, where we have applied for and anticipate the second part of our Duke Endowment Grant. This is to support oral health in our schools. As you all are aware, we do have a dental clinic, I call it in-house at the Governmental Center, that does a good job. It serves those that can come to there. We have a lot of pay out of pocket, sliding fee scale, and Medicaid recipients. But with this, with the first grant that we received was the planning part, and we're ready to move forward, is to go further into our communities with a mobile dental unit that would go to our schools. And with that, a dental team that would serve those in most need. Statistically, those of lower incomes are least likely to see dental care. Recent studies I read from the CDC that said on average kids are out almost 6 days, 2 of those which are usually for dental issues. But with that, the grant we are applying for is a 3-year grant. We've received a planning grant already. But tonight I come to you with all this information. The grant should be in your packets as well. But to move forward with some of our dental fund balance is to go ahead and put rubber to road and purchase the 38-foot gooseneck trailer. So we can go ahead and get started. The grant is particularly operational, so this will be capital from our planning grant as well as some of our fund balance to purchase. This thing is turnkey ready, so we don't have to wait for a build time. And I will tell you a joke about it. It's in Atlanta, so I flew there, and I had never been on a plane until that. So that shows how serious and how excited I was. In your packet too, for sustainability, I did bring up why it's so important to look at. There are certain billing codes that we do have to look at with our Medicaid recipients, and theoretically, up to 13 schools that we've selected that if we could go to in a year, looking at our low income and Medicaid, we would bring in about $380,000.
Commissioner Hall has a question.
Yes, I do, thank you. Trey, so you mentioned sustainability and the money you're bringing in. Once this grant is expired, do you anticipate the program will be self-supporting or self-sustaining?
Yes. Similar programs, I'll pick on Pitt County, so the home of the Pirates. They've had this grant and they've been doing this for over 20 years now.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I spoke with Jack Bett. He's the county manager for Craven County, and he sent me an email, and his last comment says, as county manager, I enjoy the fact we're able to treat dental needs in folks who more than likely would not get the help if this program did not exist without using tax dollars. So that's a pretty applauding program.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If no other questions, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Richardson, second by Commissioner Hall. All in favor, let it be known by the sound of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The new business?
Just wanted to mention that the compensation pay plan for the employees will go into effect at the first paycheck in October.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then no other new business. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Mayor Gorham and City Council Reidsville for allowing us to be here. You've always been a very helpful relationship. I really appreciate that, and I really do. As you know, we did the proclamation for law enforcement. It's very important that you start at the root cause of most of these problems with law enforcement, and I understand too that most people in law enforcement are our family, our friends, our neighbors, and they have children. They have, just like everybody else has. They have their own issues at home, just like everybody else. But the biggest thing is, I think we're lacking it from our kids growing up is respect. There's always ways you can do things without causing a bigger incident, and you can address these issues after everything's been calmed down. But I want to say I really appreciate law enforcement. Thank you so much for everything you do for our citizens and the county. You keep us safe, and that goes for all emergency personnel in Rockland County, our fire department, EMS, 911. In case you didn't know, the storm over the weekend, it was huge. Our 911 did a tremendous job fielding calls. I think, Lance, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the report was 480 calls in one night, and that's almost triple what they normally get, and they handled every one of them very professionally. So if you ever know anybody working in 911, that's a very tedious job, and I really appreciate them too. As you know, October 8th is Youth Outdoor Hunting and Gun Safety Day. It's at Rocky Ford Road at the Reidsville Training Center. We have a great event going on, so please bring your kids to learn safety of guns, safety of bow hunting, the safety of fishing. It's all about keeping our kids safe, and once you expose your kids to certain aspects of this, maybe we can save a life, and that's what the whole point of all this is to make sure our kids or family are safe. So please come out, Youth Outdoor Hunting Gun Safety Day, October 8th from 9 to 1 at the Rocky Ford Reidsville Training Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Powell.
Yes, I too would like to thank the city for hosting us, the mayor, and the council people that are here tonight. And in addition to that, I think I can speak for the entire board when I say we would like to extend our condolences to Mr. Gentry's family and the passing of John Gentry this past Saturday night. Mr. Gentry was a school administrator, a principal, an educator in the county, and he was a city councilman for a number of years. And certainly his presence will be missed in the Reidsville area. And so with that, we do extend our condolences to his family. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'd like to thank the city of Reedsville for their hospitality. Thank you for opening your doors to us tonight and hosting us this evening, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Richards?
Yeah, I'd like to recognize all of the elected officials. If I missed one, please raise your hand and let me know. But starting there with Mayor Gorham, and in addition, we had Teresa Scoble, James Festerman, and appreciate all of the Alderman support and your staff support. We have here from the school board, Kim McMichael and Paula Rakestraw. It's great to see you guys. Madison Alderman Mickey Silvers is with us. Of course, you heard from State Representative Reese Pirtle, Sheriff Sam Page, our District Attorney Jason Ramey, and the Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. And I'd have to say that the cordiality and support from City of Reedsville and all your people has been outstanding. Thank you very much. Lots of comments about our resolution, and I couldn't help but reflect on being in the 5th grade under the tutelage of Miss S.E.P. Simpson in 1959, and I think she was 103 years old. Not really, but she was wise, and I remember her well. She was politically informed. Her husband was the postmaster, and he was a Republican, and every time a Democrat came in, the Republican postmaster had to swap with the Democrat, and they had it all worked out, but they were aware of what's going on. And I remember Mrs. Simpson talking about the legal system, and she indicated at that time that there were 4 crimes that would get you to the death penalty in North Carolina. I remember it vividly: arson, rape, murder, and burglary where people were asleep in the house. Well, that was pretty simple. And as I listened to the DA, things have gotten significantly more complex. Now, I'm sure we've got more people to deal with, and that there are reasons to have all these various codes and divisions. But it said to me that perhaps we've lost the big picture, and we've allowed things to happen over time that perhaps we wouldn't allow to happen if we were sitting at it at one city. And so the purpose of my statement is to encourage everybody to stay alert. Things are going around you legislatively and administratively that if you look into a little bit, maybe you wouldn't be too happy with. And I certainly agree with protecting our law members, but I just think the penalty ought to fit the crime. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for tuning in at home. Certainly thank everyone that was here earlier tonight in support of the resolution, and hopefully something will be done to protect those that protect us. I do want to mention that if you notice, we don't always get up in the morning and try to dress similar or alike, but this month it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and as a result, you see that we do have on either pink ties, pink shirts, or just a variety of things to support breast cancer awareness. I believe after the meeting, gentlemen, Rebecca's thinking about a photograph. So just stick around afterwards, just very briefly. So I do want to thank everyone and thank the city of Reedsville. Thank you, Mayor and council members, and Summer. I know she had a lot to do putting this together, so thank you. And with that, we have a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion by Commissioner Travis, second by Commissioner Hall. All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye. Stand adjourned.